welcome back to Globalogs. Today is going to be the third installment of our series on the Venezuela narrative, and in this episode, we're going to talk about, there he is, Hugo Chavez, a transformative figure in Venezuelan history. Without an understanding of whom, it is impossible to understand where Venezuela is today and why. So, Chavez was born in '54 in the interior of western Venezuela, and to a working class family. And this shaped his understanding of economics and society and politics. He was not born into the elite, as most of the previous Venezuelan presidents had been. He was not, ethnically white, as many of the leaders of Latin America had been for centuries. He was mixed, and he was exposed to left-leaning ideas, and he joined the military. And he became dissatisfied with the state of Venezuelan politics as it was constituted under what was known at the time as the Punto Fio Pact. And it's worth taking a moment here to explore what exactly that is. The Punto Fio Pact, it was essentially electoral collusion in Venezuela among the three most important parties, the AD, the URD, and the COPEI, that essentially they agreed to contest elections among each other to seek to include the other parties in cabinets upon victory and to not challenge the legitimacy of each other's elections. Now, this produced a certain amount of stability that was appreciated certainly by the foreign companies doing business in Venezuela, because it wasn't as subject to the sort of coups and upheavals that happened across Latin America during the period from 58 to 98 under the Punto Fio Accords. But as you might imagine, with something so collusive and oligarchic, it produced a certain amount of, sclerosis at the top. It's the same elite just circulating around. There's a lot of accusation right now in the developed West that it seems like it's just sort of a revolving door of the same elites. It's as if they've made some sort of, agreement among each other just to share the wealth and the power with each other. Well, in Venezuela, there was no sort of as if it was that way. It was actually that way. And, there they are posing for the photograph of the Punto Fio Pact. And Chavez didn't like this. As did a lot of people not like this. It concentrated power only in a small group of people, and everybody else was sort of left saying, hey, what about us? And so while he was in the army, he joined and founded, really, an underground movement to try and help get rid of it. Launched an unsuccessful coup in 1992, for which he was imprisoned for 2 years, and then released, and then founded the Movement for the Fifth Republic, the MVR, and successfully contested the presidency in 1998, when he was going up against Romer, I believe is how you pronounce his name, who was seen as sort of just more of the same from the Punto Fio Pact, and Chavez represented something new, and speaking for a whole group of people who never before felt that they had any sort of substantive voice in Venezuelan politics. After he was elected, his first order of business was to propose a brand new constitution for the country, which passed with 72% of the vote the very next year, and he was then re-elected under this new constitution, which concentrated more power in his office, in the presidency, in 2000. And he then went about his whole policy of what he called, socialism for the 21st century, the Bolivarian Revolution. As I mentioned in the first episode, the Bolivarian Revolution, talking about Simón Bolívar, the, hero, the George Washington of Venezuela, and really of a large part of Latin America. As should probably come as no surprise to you after having seen the previous episode, these policies were financed almost exclusively by oil. By enormous amounts of oil revenue. And Chavez was very lucky in that he presided over Venezuela at the time of the highest oil prices in history, pretty much. He had access to more cash on his watch than all of the governments of the Punto Fio Pact time put together. So that certainly helped. But also, as should probably come as no surprise to you, all these kinds of populist, left-leaning socialist policies discomfited the elite in general, and the oil industry in particular. What's also important to note about these kinds of large-scale wealth transfers is that, well, they actually succeed in transferring wealth, and, extreme poverty in Venezuela has gone down on his watch. It has come at a cost in other parts of the economy, but extreme poverty has gone down. And, this explains at least some of his enduring popularity, or when he was alive, among the poor that he helped. They saw in him their own champion, and that's not, insignificant. In addition to these economic policies, though, he also pursued a lot of changes in foreign policy, from, being a staunch ally of the United States and aligning itself pretty much uniformly with Washington. Chavez struck out and tried to make friends pretty much with everybody that was not particularly welcome in Washington. Struck up friendship with Iran, Ahmadinejad, struck up friendship with Cuba, Bolivia, Ecuador, slightly more complex with China, of course, but became closer with China and started selling more oil to them, accepted loans, and struck all kinds of infrastructure development deals with them, and generally just tried to cut a figure of anti neoliberal U.S. and Western-sponsored ideas about the way the world should be run. And inasmuch as his symbolism gathered a lot of attention, he was quite successful in that. And because of his durability in electoral politics, he was elected in 98, 2000, 2006, and 2012 when he had cancer. He was running in 2012 when he had cancer. We'll talk about more of that next time. He was in power long enough and had access to enough money to fundamentally transform Venezuelan society. Indeed, he renamed his own party, again, from the Movement for the Fifth Republic to the slightly more combative, PSUV, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, and left his successor, Maduro, a pretty strong, and very well-defined legacy to carry out. But like I said at the outset, love him or hate him, the Bolivarian Revolution is real and substantive and has changed a lot and is going to determine the course of events in Venezuela for years to come. And it's to the next few of those years that we'll turn our attention next time. See you then. Bye-bye.